Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. Today's video is another episode of my favorite series, New and Must-Have Crafty Supplies, where I share some new supplies on the market that I've tried out and love with you all, so that you can check them out and decide if there's something that you want to add to your stash. Today's video is chock full of new supplies, including the Rabbit Hole Anti-Static Powder Tool. There are stamps, dies, stencils, and an embossing folder from a variety of card making companies. There's the new Distress color in Distress Oxide Villainous Potion from Tim Holtz, and the Tim Holtz Tonic Studios mini trimmer. As always, I have a few cards to share using these products so you can see them up close and in action. So let's jump right in and take a look at the first product that I'm going to share today. First up is the new Rabbit Hole Designs embossing tool. I have wanted to try this since it came out, but it sold out super fast when it was first released. I finally got my hands on one. I really like how compact this tool is. It's a brush and powder holder all in one. For those of you who have seen me emboss, you know I like to use a powder bag and a sweep brush to brush away excess powder. Well, with the Rabbit Hole design, you get both in one tool. Its ingenious design also lets you slide the tool up to protect the bristles of the brush so you can put the cap on without damaging them. When you first get the tool, you need to unscrew the cap at the bottom end, and then there's a stopper you need to remove. Mine was pretty tight in there, so I used a pair of pliers to turn it and get the stopper out. The tool comes with a small bottle of their special powder, which you can buy refills of. They indicate this is not cornstarch and that using cornstarch is actually not a great idea because it's a thickening agent, and that's exactly what you're trying to avoid. You don't want the powder to thicken with your fingerprint oils. Put the stopper back in and screw the cap back on and you're ready to go. As an example, I'm going to be doing some heat embossing with the Waffle Flower Thank You stamp set. This is not a brand new set, but it came out a few months ago and I love it because it has 2 thank you designs and tons of sub-sentiments. So you take the cap off the Rabbit Hole Cottontail tool and you can twist the bottom a couple of clicks to get the powder into the brush, and then use the brush to sweep it around the cardstock. The powder never comes out chunky, and I realized from their instructions that the powder bag I use is getting chunkier and chunkier because I keep touching it to pick it up to apply, and so the oils from my fingers are getting all over the bag and mixing with the powder. Once I'm done, I slide the barrel up to protect the bristles and then replace the cap so I never have to touch the brush. So I stamped the thank you and some sub-sentiments with embossing ink, and I'm covering it with white embossing powder. You can see the corner at the upper right, which did not get the cottontail on it because it was covered by my Misty magnet, has a bunch of excess embossing powder stuck to it. So the powder is doing its job. I heat set it and was very happy with the outcome. I'll be using this 2 more times in this video so you can see it again. Next up is the latest Distress color, Villainous Potion. Some of you may know that purple is not my #1 favorite color, so I only bought the Distress Oxide pad and the refill bottle this time. I don't have refills for all of my Distress Oxides yet, but I try and get a couple here and there, and I always buy them with the new colors. Here are the 4 other purples that were already in the Distress family. So let's stamp them out so you can see how this new color fits in and decide if you want to add it to your stash. On the left, I'm stamping Villainous Purple 4 times in a row with a swatch stamp. On the right, I'll stamp the other 4 colors, starting with Shaded Lilac, then Wilted Violet, Dusty Concord, and finally Seedless Preserves. Of course, my favorite technique with Distress Oxides is ink blending, so I'll also show a blended swatch of each of the colors. When stamped, Villainous Potion is the deepest, darkest purple in the group. But what's really fun about this color is how pretty the purple is when blended, and you can see the lightest area of the blend. Out of all of the new Distress colors this year, this one is probably the most unique from the others in its range. It really looks nothing like the 4 other purples available. So if you like purple or even love purple, you may want to think about adding this one to your collection. Next up is the Tonic Studios Tim Holtz Mini Guillotine Trimmer. Some of you know that I share an office with my husband and that space is a real factor for me. So I decided to grab this little trimmer to save some space on my desk while I'm crafting. I already have the 8.5 Tonic Studios Tim Holtz trimmer, so I knew I would like the blade and the construction. Here you can see how much smaller the mini is than the 8.5. If you have tons of room, you probably don't need this trimmer. But if you have a tiny workspace and you already have your card panels and your bases cut out and you just want to have a small trimmer out on your desk for cutting things down while you're working, this might be for you. The guidelines at the top go to 3.5 inches, but I found that cutting to the outer edge of the top is pretty much 4.25. Also, the little black cupped area at the top is a magnet, and you can hold small items like paper clips or small dies there. Next, we have the Altenew Cross Weaves 3D Embossing Folder. This folder definitely embosses a 3D look, but the plastic is not as thick as some of the 3D folders I've worked with recently. I used my regular embossing folder sandwich for me, the Gemini Junior, which is 2 clear plates around the folder with the cardstock inside, and you can see it came out beautifully. I love embossed metallic papers like this Spellbinders Mirror cardstock. Next up is the Miss Ink Stamps Between the Lines stencil. I have a bunch of thin line stencils, but none that looks quite like this, so I thought I would give it a try. Since the lines are so thin and detailed, I'm going to use pixie spray on the back to hold it in place. Just make sure the pixie spray is nice and dry before you apply it to the cardstock. Otherwise, it could tear the cardstock when you peel it off. So I'm going to use a domed foam blender to apply the new Villainous Purple at the bottom of the stencil. Then I'm going to blend some Wilted Violet in the next section, and then some Seedless preserves. When you peel back the stencil, you can see that it is a really fun, versatile design that really adds a great geometric looking background to your cards. Another new stencil I had my eye on and decided to finally grab is the pretty pink Posh layered Ornaments stencil. There are 3 layering stencils in this pack, and they are just the cutest ornaments. This time I wanted to mask off the ornaments instead of coloring the whole stencil at once, so I'm using Arctic's washi tape to mask off the row below where I'm going to ink blend. I used picked raspberry for the top and the bottom row, and then I used Wilted Violet for the third and salvaged patina for the second. It's really easy to line up the second stencil on top because you can see exactly where the details from the ornaments are supposed to go. So I used Villainous Purple for the second layer, Seedless Preserves, Wilted Violet, and then added prize ribbon on top of the salvaged patina. This fun color combination was so easy to achieve with this stencil. For the caps, again, it's very easy to place the third stencil down to see where the caps are supposed to go. You can overlap them a bit on the ornaments, and then I used a metallic pigment ink for them. This will come back to haunt me later because pigment ink takes forever and a day to dry, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Next up is a Posca Paint Pen. I know Posca pens have been around for a long time, but I found this one in Simon Says Stamp's new products recently, so I thought I would give it a try. As it is a paint pen, you need to shake it up and then press the nib down to get the ink flowing to the tip the first time you use it. And oops, I don't know what I was looking at, but I wasn't paying attention and it pooled out, but that's okay. It gives me a chance to see how long it takes to dry. The nib was fine enough that I was able to make small dots, draw small stars, and even stitched lines. Of course, it's not as detailed as my favorite gel pen, which you can see the video for right in the upper right corner here. But I really like how bright white it is. Even when it dries, it did not seep into the black cardstock and it remains opaque. I thought I would try it out on top of the ink blending I did on the ornaments. The ink for the ornaments wasn't even 100% dry, but you can still see it's pretty white with those tiny dots. The other great thing about a paint pen versus a gel pen is you're not limited in what mediums you work on. Here, I easily added white dots to the mirror cardstock, and they show up beautifully. You could also work on things like vellum. Next is the Avery Elle Layering Star stamp set and matching dies. There are 2 star ornaments included in the layering stamp set, and both can be cut out with the same star die. There are also some pretty sentiments and sparkly images and a string image as well. The stamps are pretty easy to layer because the ornament has a ring at the top where you would place the string through. The star on the left has 4 layers and the one on the right has 3 layers. The one on the left is a 3-dimensional folded star ornament, and the one on the right looks like a glittery star. I used Villainous Purple to stamp the sparkle images and then cut everything out with the coordinating dies. Now that you've taken a peek at everything, let's use these new products to make some cards. I'm going to use the mini trimmer to cut out a heat embossed sentiment strip. This type of fine detailed cutting is where this trimmer really shines. You can get very exact and cut off a teeny tiny bit, and like I mentioned, it takes up very little room on your work surface. I also use it to trim the stenciled background down because I want to layer it on some fuchsia cardstock from the stamp market, but I'm pretty much eyeballing how much I want to cut off, and I do miss the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch guidelines from the 8.5 trimmer that I own also. I used Villainous Purple to stamp the script Thank You from the Waffle Flower set. I really love how this color stamps and blends. The dark stamping is perfect for a sentiment to make it really stand out. I popped up the thank you on white foam squares and then cut a black foam square in half to hide it behind the sentiment strip. This card made me, even a non-purple fanatic, really appreciate purple. For the ornament card, I trimmed it down with the mini trimmer, and here's where I regret my pigment ink ornament cap choice. It was not dry, and putting it in the trimmer smudged one of the caps. Ugh. So I grabbed the trimmer and cut a strip of silver glitter cardstock, which is easy to cut a nice straight strip with this trimmer, and even adhered it down, and then decided I didn't like the way it looked. So I used the rabbit hole COTTONTAIL embossing tool to treat some purple cardstock and then stamped a sentiment from the stamp market Sending Cheers stamp set, heat embossed it with white embossing powder, then die cut it and popped it up over the biggest smear. And then I used the white Posca pen to cover up any other smaller smudges or stains. And honestly, the bright white pen went perfectly with the Nina Solar white cardstock that I had used to ink blend the ornaments on the background. To create a card with the 3D embossed background, I'm going to first trim it down in the mini trimmer. And again, I'm just trimming the edges off and any spots where maybe it got embossed too much and some of the metallic paper folded and turned white. So now I'm going to use some Memory Runner XL, my favorite tape runner, to adhere that down to an A2 piece of navy cardstock from the stamp market. Instead of stamping the strings, I decided to just cut them out with the coordinating die out of some silver glitter cardstock. And then I'm going to put tape runner behind everything to adhere it down. I felt like there was enough dimension and interest that I did not need to pop anything up really, and that background is just incredible on the metallic gold. I'm going to use the rabbit hole anti-static tool one more time to treat the navy cardstock so that I can stamp a sentiment from the stamp set in embossing ink and then cover that up with gold embossing powder and just tap off the excess. Don't go crazy flicking the cardstock. I definitely learned that from Tim Holtz. It's better to just tap it. Otherwise, you're going to have to reapply the embossing powder because you'll get some off of the sentiment. This little trimmer is perfect for things like this. Trimming the little sentiments that I have down into a little square or rectangle, it works perfect for that. So then I'm going to use some tape runner one more time, and you can just buff off the excess powder with a dry cloth. I was just using my fingers there, and then I really wasn't sure about this card at first, but I ended up really liking the navy gold and then the light pops of blue. I had so much fun making today's episode because there was such a variety of products, but I'd really love to hear what your favorite was from today, so let me know in the comments below. If you missed last month's new and must-have crafty supplies video, I'm going to link to it right over here. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. My favorite what? Weird. That's it. Just hello. There. Pre-prepping myself. I forgot to make the arrow. I'm supposed to make an arrow that shows which direction I need to point. It's just be a little post-it note right on the side. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Now, before you go, what? Where are you going?